Shit's Gone Sideways.
Well, Shad, thank you for coming on Shit's Gone Sideways.
Oh, thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here. An honour, to be honest. A little bit disappointed I didn't get asked to do this earlier.
Well, I mean, we talked about it for a while, didn't we?
But then you started hitting your fame with your, I do jokes about me going to prison, and all of a sudden you were too big for one of the OG customers.
Well, you haven't been in Sydney also.
Yeah, that's fair. No, that is fair.
But yes, so it's funny, seeing when I first started getting into comedy and knew that you were already, been doing it for years. It was interesting to be able to chat to you about that because, obviously we went to uni together. We were in Bathurst. Do you know Dave Boyle, who's been on this podcast as well, went to CSU?
Really?
Yeah. He lived. I forget where he lived. He lived somewhere else on campus.
There's weirdly in my time of moving around the country, the web of that CSU era of party university is stretched.
This is
very far.
This is Charles Sturt University in Bathurst for anyone that wonders.
Yeah. Which is a shit uni now, apparently.
Really?
Apparently it's dead and the city's dying.
Oh, wow.
It was propped up on drug taking 20-year-olds for too long.
R.I.P. Wow. Yes. So your trajectory, you've been involved in comedy for how many years? Have you been doing it now?
I've been. I say probably 8. I reckon it's probably been 8 years. This is probably my 8th year since doing consistent open mic type stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I first had a crack in Darwin. And then I did 3 gigs or something. I was convinced by a comic up there, Amy Hetherington, real early days. Mm-hmm. And I was doing radio at the time, decided to do it as just a radio thing. And then was this is way better. And then I got a job in Cairns, thought that there was already a little open mic scene there, and there wasn't. So I didn't do stand-up again for probably about a year or so.
Yeah.
And then probably a year and a half. And then I started a little room with some people up there. And then that kind of blew up into a little scene. And that was the only way I did gigs until I finally ended up in Brisbane doing it more consistently as well.
Were there good crowds coming to those shows in Cairns?
Yeah, it was. I think we would consistently, the one I was running originally was once a month and it would kind of pack out. And then my mate Pete that I do a show with, Peter James, he started a little Monday night one that went weekly. And that now is 50 people every week. It's sold out. I think it's been sold out nonstop for a year and a half now.
That's cool.
Maybe. So
it's got a bit of a cult following.
And it's a real comedy savvy crowd in Cairns. It's kind of funny. It's
really?
Because it's grown, the scene grew and the crowds kind of grew and it had a little bit of a, what do you say, an underground kind of vibe to it.
Yeah.
We'd get a lot of people that were audiences there that wouldn't even go to the showcases that would come up, wouldn't even know that they were on. And then that kind of grew. And then through what Pete's been doing, they've had he sends, because he's a bit of a comedy connoisseur, he'll send up people that'll MC or headline Dan Rath.
Is that Laughing Heart? Is that what it's called?
Laughing Heart. Yeah. So he'll bring up a Dan Rath who's quite out there, different.
Yeah.
And then it'll be, Jacques Barrett, who I reckon's pound for pound the best comedian in the country.
Yeah.
Alongside Luke Heggie and stuff. And those guys will go up and do sets. So it's this good mix that you've got a crowd that's just up for whoever's coming.
Yeah, That's cool. Yeah, I'd be very keen to do Cairns at some point. That sounds like it'd be a lot of fun.
Well, man, I'll put you in touch.
Thanks, mate.
I'm not going to promise you anything, mate, but I'll let you know.
Just see what you can do, mate. So when you're working in radio, how did you get into that pathway of working in radio?
Well, the uni degree that you and I studied did fuck all for me, really. So,
what were you studying?
I was actually studying radio, which is weird.
Yeah, okay.
It was it was glorified communications, advertising degree, pretty much. I got out of uni, didn't work in it, but I always kind of wanted to do it. So I did community radio for a bit. And was I really enjoyed it.
What was your role at community radio? You're
announcer.
Yeah.
I did. It was actually probably, I think, one of the funnest times I had doing radio.
Why?
It was, it doesn't sound like it would have been fun because it was kind of a shit period of my life, but I was doing I was working for Channel 10, scheduling ads, 9 to 5, earning fuck all money.
Yeah.
And then every Friday
I've done that before. It's a really boring job.
Oh, it's so boring.
Yeah.
But at the time, Channel 10 had that one sports station.
Yeah.
So you just have sport going. You're just fucking sitting around doing whatever. But I'd finish work on a Friday and then I would drive down to the Central Coast, to Gosford, and I'd do a community radio show during the graveyard shift on a Friday night. So it'd be I want to say it was like 10 to 1 on like Coast FM.
Do you ever get figures on how many people are listening?
No. But,
No?
but judging by the phone calls I get, mostly hardstyle fans who are about 3 pingers deep. Because I do an hour of hip hop requests.
Yeah.
And then it'd get to midnight or whatever. And then I used to do a countdown clock. So I'd be like, all right, because I had lockouts down there, and like Terrigal was the only place you could really kind of go out for a good time in Erina, Woodford at the time. And I'd do a countdown. So I'd be like, it's 15 minutes until lockout. So if you're getting in the car, like if you're not in the car yet, if you're at kick-ons or whatever, we're like kicking off, get in the car, start heading in.
Yeah.
And I just get calls for like requests and then I got some mates that actually some friends we went to uni as well to come down and just DJ. To like just fuck around for a bit while we're down there. So it was really fun actually. So I did that for a while.
Yep.
And then kind of bumped around in some work and shit. And then when I
was that community radio, is that paid or unpaid?
it's unpaid. It's completely volunteer.
So you're just doing it because you love doing it.
Yeah. I was just like, this is sick. And to be honest, mate, I didn't have enough money to go and do anything in Sydney. I was earning fuck all. Like it would have been less. I reckon it was like I was taking home less than 800 a week or something. And when you like pay in Sydney rent, like even back then it was fucked.
There's not much left, yeah.
Yeah, so I was like, this is just something good I can do on a Friday night and enjoy myself. And then I kind of, a few years later, I kind of bumped around a bit, and then I was a bit disillusioned with what I was doing. And I kind of got into the idea of like doing a little extra study to try and up my skill set and get a job, actually on the announcing side of it.
Yep.
So I went and studied for a year, probably the busiest year of my life. I was doing 9 to 5 study at Afters at Moore Park. And I also had a job driving
That's the Australian Film, Television, Radio School.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you for clarifying. Sorry, I'm just in a chat, mate. I'm not going to go into breakdown everything, but keep up, people. All right.
We're just helping our international audience of like 5 guys in America or something like that. 1 guy in Brazil.
Australian Film, Television, Radio School sounds a lot more posh than it is. But no, I was doing that, which was 9 to 5. Same time, I was driving the Chalky Milk icy cold cans of Coke car for Today FM and Triple M, the radio stations in Sydney.
Yeah.
And afterwards...
What do you do with what does that mean? You drive around giving out free shit?
Yeah, so back when like Kyle and Jackie O were on Today FM, I'd drive out to Parramatta, I'd hand out yogurts and a newspaper at the train station.
Fuck.
And then get in the car, drive it back, park it at the World Square in Town Hall, get on the bus at the time out to Moore Park, study till 5, and then I'd finish at 5 and I'd go to Zetland to a bottle shop and I'd work there till 10, 11. And then I'd do that Thursday, Friday, Saturday I'd do that, and I'd still be studying the other days of the week. And that was just my life for a whole year while I studied, with the idea of, I'm going to get this radio job at some point. Yeah.
So you just ate shit for a year, just had to just grind it out.
Yeah, but I was living in. I actually was probably the best time I had in Sydney, to be honest. There's something about like you just make shit work. Don't you reckon? It's like even now, it's like when you were poor and you had no money, you still seem to get stuff and like get food and
have fun
and somehow figure it out. And then when you get more money, it's like you still don't have any money.
Yeah. I know. I know
what
a lot about
it's like,
that.
I don't understand how that happens. But
the more money I ever made, the more dumb ways I found to spend it.
But
it's a sliding scale for sure.
I loved it. I was really enjoying myself, going out and living in a good part of Sydney. And then the end of the year came and there was no job. So I was so devo.
So you applied for radio jobs? No,
got knocked back.
And you're just like, no. How many did you apply for?
A fair few. I was kind of earmarked to. I still remember this. I did an internship with Today FM and Triple M on the back end of my course, and like I think I was like 23 at the time or something, and it seemed like it was all good. I've been working for them.
Yep.
Now I'm doing the internship, but then what I quickly realized was it was just more. We can get this guy to work for free now instead of actually paying him, and a lot of non-communication between the two departments I worked for. And I remember at the end of it, you did 2 weeks there, and then you're supposed to like give you an air check, which is like your audio demo of you being like, "Hey, this is Katy Perry," like that kind of shit. And you give it to them, and then they're supposed to be like, this is good, this is bad, this is what we might have on offer. Are you willing to move? And I was happy to move anywhere in the country. I didn't give a shit. And I remember I gave him the thing, and he sat down, and this guy was like across from the table. He listened to the tape, and then he just It was the most brutal. They call it an air check. It was the most brutal air check. He was just like, he'd listen to a bit, he'd stop, and he'd go, "It's not very funny, is it?" And then he'd play again.
Fuck.
And he'd be like, "Bit clunky." Then he'd go again. And then, like, I've been studying for a full year, learning how to do the panel, learning how to do the announcing. I've been working for these guys. I've even done a little bit for them on air. And this guy had such disregard for me. He didn't even know I'd been here working. That's how he spoke to me. It was the end of my internship. And he goes, "Yeah, I think, like, during your internship, you should probably go downstairs and practice in the studio that we have." And I was like, "This is the last day of my internship."
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh, really?" I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, I don't know how to, can't help you then." And that was it. And I was just like, fuck, man. Like, what a waste.
What a way to make someone feel like a piece of shit.
Oh, dude. It was so brutal. I remember leaving that being like, fucked. I'm like, I was living with my best mate, Coops, like, you know, as well. Yeah. And I was so bummed. I remember I went out. I got so fuck-eyed. Like, just like, whatever.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, like a couple of things happened between then. My mate of mine got a job in Darwin. And then it was just kind of a good set of circumstances. He went up there, we got along really well, and he kind of kept pitching, and then they eventually were like, "Look, we got this job. Doesn't suit your skill set, but if you're willing to produce a talkback radio show for 3 hours, we'll let you do a 2-3 hour radio show of your own in the afternoon." And I was like, "Sign me up." So I moved to Darwin.
So what radio station is that?
That was for Mix Mix and Hot FM in Darwin.
All right.
In the Territory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So hold on, you were in Sydney and then you agreed to go to Darwin.
Backed up my shit, moved to Darwin.
I imagine it was for fuck all cash.
Yeah. I was doing breakfast. At one point, I ended up doing breakfast radio in Darwin within about, I think, 6 or 8 months.
Yeah.
And they were paying me $42,000 a year, and I asked for a pay rise, and they laughed at me. Unbelievable, mate.
They're like, "Mate,
unbelievable.
You're lucky to be here, cunt."
Yeah, crazy, crazy attitude.
Yeah.
But then I got picked up by Cairns, which was kind of where I always wanted to end up.
So how long were you working in Darwin for?
2 years, roughly. Yeah, about 2 years. And then,
what was it like living there?
Awesome.
Yeah.
I got to live in Darwin when it was like peak Darwin. Like it was the mining money was rolling. Everyone was rich. The rental prices were as big as Sydney. People were just like, "Hey," like, you know, it was really cool. I used to skate to work in the morning because Darwin's just 2 streets, really. Skate to work in the morning. I was burning the candle at both ends. You go out, party, like, you know, you're in early 20s, go out and party until 3 a.m. or 2 a.m. and then you go home for a quick kip and then roll your ass into fucking the radio station in the morning to do a breakfast shift.
Yeah.
It was sick, man. It was like you just do whatever you wanted.
I've heard guys talk about like the scene for like clubbing and chicks in Darwin. It's like the ratio is so many more dudes than women.
Unbelievable.
That
6 to 1, I think it is.
Yeah, that they call like a Sydney 5 is like a Darwin 10.
Yeah, 100%. There's definitely that. I think my mate Amy has a great joke about it where she's like, 6 to 1 ratio. She goes like, so it's like good odds, but the odds are no good.
Supply and demand. Yes.
But yeah, fuck. It was good, man. I had a great time in Darwin. My favourite, one of the best nights out in Darwin you can have is at the gay nightclub. I hope it's still running. The gay nightclub called Throb, which is the best name for a gay nightclub. And it'd be the best night out. I mean, you go into Throb and they do like they do a drag show.
Yeah.
But it'd be just a club, and you're like dancing on the dance floor, having a great time, and then out of like it's the same time every night. But I remember I went to one theme night, and it was called Batman and Throbbing. Love a pun.
That's amazing.
Love a pun.
Batman and Throbbing at Throb Nightclub.
Batman and Throbbing at Throb Nightclub, and you're just on the dance floor enjoying yourself. Best music because they wouldn't only just play Neo or whatever, and all of a sudden you'd just be dancing, and the music would stop, and then you just hear this. Get the fuck off my dance floor. And it's just this miscellaneous was their name. I remember because I used to meet him a lot. It was quite famous in Darwin at the time. Would just come out and be like, should shoo you off the dance floor. Like proper, because there was a carpeted line. And if you were like sitting on, be like, get the fuck off. They get off, and then like they just do a drag show on the dance floor that you were on for about 15, 20 minutes.
Wow.
And then that'd end, and they'd be like, all right, fine, back on you go. The music would start.
And people are loving it?
Nuts. Yeah, man. It was sick. It was so good. But yeah, I had a great time there. I did all sorts of weird shit. Pissed off politicians and all that kind of fun, crazy stuff on a radio station. It was quite exciting, yeah.
And so tell us about some of those times with the politicians.
Well, it's probably foreshadowing what happened to me in Cairns now that I think about it.
Yeah.
In Darwin, there's like, they've got a chief minister rather than a premier, like the states do.
Yeah.
And because it's like this, essentially a small town, they call it the wedding cake. It's the Parliament House.
Yep.
And it's like you can just spot it in the main city of Darwin, like CBD. And because of how Darwin is, there's like Darwin famous.
Right.
So every politician is pretty much known.
Darwin
and they wander
famous.
around. Like the chief minister would be out, like, and there was like the scandals that you see in a federal level in this country have already happened in like a little territory level there.
Yeah.
Like when I was there, they had I'd arrived just after the chief minister had rolled the past chief minister while he was on holidays in Japan. So the guy came back from a holiday and they're like, oh, we've voted you out.
And he got knifed.
He got knifed.
Yeah.
And then that same chief minister got knifed at like 11 o'clock at night, refused to step down, and by 4 a.m. did a press conference with the guy who tried to knife him by his side.
Fuck.
Now as his deputy.
Awkward.
Like it's just like this type of dumb shit. And then at the same time, he was sleeping with his media manager. So you're just watching her, like he got her pregnant. So you're just watching her gradually look more and more pregnant at every press conference while his wife's like...
Oh, I want that hadn't hit the news yet.
Oh, no, it was known. But like the media people, they'd invite the media around every... I think it was like at the end of sitting every whatever it is, quarter or whatever, and the media people would go there and get blind. And like I sat in the speaker's chair once because I was just drinking.
What? So it's just like
carrying on
it was just like a known thing that was not released.
Oh man, there's heaps of that type of stuff. The treasurer got stood down because he called a gay staffer a shirt lifter, like just like documented. Like it's just stuff like that would happen all the time. Like they're just outrageous. Like they're mental. And I remember when the chief minister knifing happened, I like did like a really awful parody song, but it was like scathing of the chief. And the guy that I was doing breakfast on the other radio station, and the guy that I used to produce would do all the politician chats, and he loved it so much that he got me over onto his show with my co-host and played the song to the chief minister while the guy who tried to knife him
a song
was there.
specifically designed for?
Yeah, it was straight at him, just completely about the whole
How
situation.
did the song come about?
Well, I was just watching what was happening and just laughing.
You made the song.
Yeah, so me and my mate Harry wrote it, and it was just a parody of, I mean, how original commercial radio stations doing a parody song awfully, but it was just a parody of the real Slim Shady, but it was the real Chief Minister, and it was just documenting the process of all the things that happened in the course of that 6 months leading up to what happened, and it got played to him live on air with the Chief Minister and the deputy who tried to knife him sitting there explaining themselves as to why everyone should be okay with
Did they find it funny or not?
No. Not at all. Didn't find it funny 3 months later when he came on my show and I played it to him again.
Oh.
So I got in a bit of shit for that. But yeah. So politicians and radio with me, I'd get in trouble a bit.
Yeah.
For being a little bit too cheeky back then, and then I'd learn a few years later also not to be too cheeky again.
Yeah. So you spent 2 years in Darwin, then you went to Cairns, and so how did that job opportunity come up in Cairns?
I had a mate that did breakfast there. I had two mates that did breakfast there, and then one I used to work with in Darwin, another I just knew through the traps of radio, and he decided to leave that show to go overseas, and my mate that I knew just suggested me for the job, and I ended up demoing for it and got it. So.
Great. So that was a breakfast show?
Yeah, breakfast radio in Cairns. So it was hot, and I think now it's hit.
Cool.
So they love it. Just change a vowel, guys. Complete rebrand.
What kind of stuff goes into like putting together a radio show? Like what does it look like in terms of, do you sit down every morning like early and plan it out, or is it shit you do in the afternoon? Like I've got no idea. How do you prepare your show?
I mean, we were regional radio, so there's no producers
Yeah.
in regional radio.
So you're just doing it yourself.
It's just you and your co-host. You got a whiteboard. You just kind of write some shit up on there. And
So what hours are you on air?
at the time, we were 5:30 till 9, I believe.
5:30 to 9 in the morning. And so when you're whiteboarding, is this after your show and for the next day?
Yeah,
or,
so you'll kind of half plan the show for the next day, so it's easy. So you don't have to get in until 4:45 or whatever, or 4:30, depending. And then in the morning, you'd kind of fill the more news of the day type shit would go in, and stuff would get bumped out and moved to the next day if it's evergreen, where it's like it doesn't matter when it gets done.
Yeah. So if there's like burning things in the news agenda that you need to talk about, you can just
chuck that in. And evergreen stuff like fucking, I don't know. What's those old classic radio tropes? How do you have your Vegemite? That kind of shit can be done at any time. So it's like, that just keeps getting moved back and back down the list. And then, and in the morning you'll kind of rejig what you're doing, and then, mic's on, off you go.
Yeah.
But then you don't just finish and get to go home.
No, what
like the Metro guys and stuff get to finish and probably at best spend an hour at home, unless they've got something pressing they got to do for the most part.
Yeah. So what are you doing after your show?
You're doing what producers do in the major cities. You'll be planning interviews and stuff for your show, or recording them, but also, especially when I started, you had a second job.
Yeah.
So it was like I was production. So like for the breakfast show, I'd cut up all the promos for the shows, so the little best ofs and stuff, and the podcast and that. And then my co-host would do like a bit of planning, interview sourcing, socials, all sorts of different stuff. So you do that other job for X amount of time.
Yeah. Okay. So I think a lot of people think, that there's just the bit where you're on air.
Yeah.
But there's a lot that goes on underneath the surface.
When you're in those gigs are few and far between now, though, I feel like. There's not that many regional gigs left. But
they're all syndicated from bigger
A lot of them. Like the hit one that I did, that's not local anymore. That's all done out of Townsville maybe. But
yeah.
But like, there's not that many local breakfast shows left in the country. They downsized a fuck ton of them. So, but yeah, that used to be the.
Do you think that's a bad thing?
Yeah, I think it's like it sucks for people that want to try and do that. I think there's like a viability thing. I think it kind of robs it from the towns, because it's kind of hard to be the every. I don't know. Towns love their radio station, mate. Like local towns, like they froth it because there's an element of like you're right. One thing I liked about it, which sounds kind of stupid, but like I coached a little local footy team when I was up there and stuff like that. And you'd go and like I'd go to do that on the weekend, little under sixes at the Cairns Kangaroos, and like you do stuff like that. You'll do a community run or something, or a fundraiser, or you'd talk about fun events that people are putting on and things like that. And like social media is obviously a great way to get word out for stuff. We all know that. But there's something about the radio being involved in that kind of stuff that was really fun and exciting. And I think that those kind of moments don't really exist anymore when you have these big fat syndicated ones. They're a little bit harder for them. It's not their fault. Like they're just, you're in one town and you've got to try and cover broad enough to go, we're talking, like I got mates that are doing a show that's for all of regional Queensland. Well, like
it's a big...
Like Townsville to Cairns is 4.5 hours on a good day.
Yeah.
So it's like a lot of people think that Cairns and Townsville are right next to each other. They're fucking not. And then Mackay to Townsville is almost the same. So it's like there are differences to these places. There is a lot of similarities, but it's like, what's going on in Cairns is very different from what's going on in Townsville.
Yeah, right. And there's a lot of local stories that spread between all those towns, right?
Yeah. So I think that's probably the shit thing.
Yeah.
But, also they were paying people fuck all, so I don't know why they were saying it was so expensive to run. So, whatever.
And how long were you there for in Cairns?
I was in Cairns for 4 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. I love Cairns.
Did you have more fun in Darwin or Cairns?
Cairns.
Yeah.
Yeah. I liked Cairns more than Darwin.
Yeah.
I think I always wanted to go back to Cairns. I kind of lived there when I was real little, and my dad and my mum used to always talk about how good it was living in Cairns. So I kind of had this idea of wanting to go back there when I was in my like teen years and stuff.
Yeah.
So it was cool to be like, I'm going to go to the place that I kind of wanted to go in the first place. So that's really cool.
Is it beautiful? Is it scenic?
Yeah. It's great. Mate, it's the best. It's like sunny, weather's great, it's thriving. There's always something going on. That's what I loved about Cairns. There was always something happening. You go anywhere and there was shit going on, you know?
Yeah.
And then you obviously got, the reef, and then you got the rainforest.
And while you were doing the radio there, there was a period where you were also doing comedy there at the same time?
Yeah, so about a year or so in, I started doing stand-up because I really wanted to do it.
That must have been a fun point in your life. You're doing radio, which is something you dreamed of doing and you studied to do, and then you're also doing comedy as well. Sounds like you would have been pretty satisfied, right, with your life?
Are we ever satisfied, mate?
You fuck with.
No, I think I got the idea that my dream was, this was the idea in my head when people would ask me, well, what's your kind of goal? What do you want to do? And even to this day, when people ask me that, I don't fucking know. I just say something, you know? I don't feel like, especially the way I live my life now, what radio did give me, which was probably the shock of when I did lose my job the way I did, that I had to kind of rejig my mind for, was you kind of, when you work in a job, there's like a corporate structure. So you kind of think, oh, if I do this, then I get to do that. And then I'll end up here and I'll do that. And it's like easy to kind of go, oh, that's a goal. Yeah. And that's a structure I'll try and live my professional life to. But like at the time in radio, my idea of that was, fuck, what Hughesy and Tommy Little get to do is sick. I do a show in the afternoon, then I just go and do gigs. That'd be the dream. If I can get that good at comedy. I realized early, like, the radio industry at the time really liked to honeydick you. Where they're like, yeah, man, but if you keep doing this for us, then like eventually we'll give you this job at this cool place. And then the job would come up and it would go to the Bachelor or the ex-reality TV person.
Yeah, right.
And
so they string you along.
Yeah, and it just keeps you in your place. And I saw it happen real bad with really talented people like my co-hosts at the time, like Carly Porch, Laria Brophy, who one still works in radio, another just works in media now, but just really badly how they do it to them. And was it because they were women? Yes, but but like they really did that. And I kind of had the realization where I was like, if I'm ever going to get anywhere in this to what I want to do, I need to be better at something other than radio that then makes them, you know what I mean? Where it's like, oh, is this good comedian or good TikTok or whatever?
I mean, it must be frustrating for people that have worked their ass off to climb the ranks in radio, right? When some fuckwit off like a reality show just swans in and gets a job that they've been working their whole life to try and get, but because they've got some profile from some shitty reality show, they take it, right?
And I think it's not to say that everyone that does that's shit.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying that everyone that's done it was shit. Just in my period of time, 90% of the people that did it were fucking shit. Like, they had some chick from The Bachelor go on and she had a book that was called How to Do Radio or some shit. And she posted it up online. And I was like, what a spit in the face. And she took like the female role of the Gold Coast show. And I was like, what a way to just spit in the face of every female talent you've got that you've been saying that I've heard in meetings constantly. Oh, if you keep doing this, you'll end up here. And all right. And you got people that are working for 5-6 years or whatever. And you go, well, that sucks for them. And you can say it's because they didn't sit a certain brand or they wanted this kind of whatever. Well, it lasted fucking less than a year and they had to turf her and revamp the show again anyway, you know?
Yeah, and in the meantime, these people that have been working their ass off feel unappreciated.
And they're not getting a pay rise. And they're not like, and they're getting treated like shit. Like some of the bosses that I've worked for have treated some of especially the women I worked with, some of them got treated so fucking badly because in regional, you've got old dogs. You got these old used car salesmen that have come to sell fucking real estate agent cunts just working,
rusted on.
Mate, honestly, like a bit of, like if they had their way, they'd be walking in, slapping the women's ass on the way through, going, "Get me a coffee, toots," like that kind of shit. Just there, you can see them trying to hold on, right, like to stop themselves from getting in trouble, and it was just tough. I just saw that kind of happening, and that kind of disillusioned me with radio. And at the same time, I was running this little tiny comedy club and having a lot of fun, like bringing up comedians that I'd met early days. Because my first touch of comedy was I helped a mate of mine, Mitch Garling, run a gig just fresh out of uni. And I kind of met comedians. And I was like, oh, that's a really good job, but I could never do it, you know? So I started bringing acts up and that kind of got me going, oh, I could try and do this a bit better. And radio gave me a natural, I think, hosting ability. So it was like I kind of tapped into that and I had to host the events a lot because it was like who can just keep things moving.
Yep.
And the beauty of doing it in Cairns, there was no established scene, so everyone just had to figure it out. So it was like everyone just did things a bit differently back then.
Creating the rules for yourselves.
Yeah. And I think it was something that I wish I could still tap into, because I think it's kind of ironic. It's like, I mean, you kind of, like, I'd say I'm better now. So it's almost like the better I've gotten, the more self-conscious I think I get about doing stuff, if that makes sense.
No,
like,
what are you talking about?
Like, I'll try and, back then, I'd try anything. I'd have an idea and go, I'm just going to do it. And then I'll just go. And it's kind of weird now.
But you felt more fearless then.
Yeah, I reckon I feel more. Yeah, exactly. I was more fearless then than I am now, which is weird.
Yeah,
but I don't know why that is. I think maybe it's because I have a taste now, and maybe I have an understanding of what's good and what's bad a bit better than what I did back then.
Yeah,
but like,
I feel you.
Yeah, because we spoke about this, I think, when we were hanging out in Melbourne, and you were like. He said, I'm a straight crusher. I do nothing but crash. And I was like, keep that confidence,
It's not exactly how I said it, but
keep that same energy. He tipped his hat. He had a cigar.
I think.
But do you not get that? Like, you're not like.
I think, yeah, but I would agree that I was more fearless when I first initially started, because I guess I didn't know what I would talk about. And I still haven't really got an idea of what's funny. So you're trying anything to see what's funny.
Yeah.
But then as I think I've gotten a sense of more of like what things seem to work, what things I've got to strike out with, I guess it's kind of slowly narrowed my view of what I would talk about, if that makes sense.
Right.
Or maybe I'm talking out of my ass. I don't know. There's just
That's right, mate. With two comedians on a podcast, that's what they do.
When I was first, what?
We're going to sit here and talk about about the process. How fucking amazing!
When I first went to open mics, right, and it's just a bunch of like incels and young blokes that are just sitting there just saying edgelord fucking material
Think about trans women, mate.
You know, talking about abortions and and jacking off, and like you realize that people talk about this stuff because in an open mic room where it's mostly comics that have heard a lot of your shit, and also they're staring at their phone, barely listening, and it's basically no audience other than other comics. You know, it takes a lot to make these fuckers laugh, and so you start just saying the most insane things just to try and get any reaction out of the room, and that's not necessarily good training for normal comedy in front of a proper audience, but that makes you, I guess, a bit fearless because you're like, oh, well, barely anyone in this room is even listening to anything I say, so fuck it, I can say anything. But as you kind of progress and you start doing it to normal audiences, you start reining that in a bit in terms of just the insanity that may pour out of your mouth.
Yeah, I'd agree. But how do you know which one's the insane thing and which one's the good thing? Until you say it into a microphone, I guess.
I'll still go to those open mics and test it out, you know, just in case it's the first time. Yeah. So you're in Cairns, and then when did the big incident happen?
When I got fired for calling a prime minister a cunt. I got 4 years into Cairns. Like I said, I was trying to do that comedy thing alongside stand-up. Stand-up alongside radio. And I was kind of doing pretty well in terms of in the bubble of Cairns. And I weirdly just got a call, and they were like, we want you to demo for Triple M down in Sydney, Central Coast. And I'd always say yes to a demo because it's just a bit of fun. And I was like, all right, I did it. I did the demo. It was fine.
So what does a demo look like?
They get you. So like what happened was Akmal, another comedian, Akmal Saleh Akmal was leaving the Triple M breakfast show in Gosford.
Yep.
And what they do is they go and they demo a bunch of different people. So what they'll do is they'll go, all right, Hamo, either they might be like, come to the studio, do a segment, or off air, we'll just record essentially like a podcast as if it's the radio show, and we'll see what your chemistry is like.
Yep.
And then they'll go from that to like next and then next level. So I did the chemistry thing, and I did it. And to be honest, I was just kind of like, yeah, it was fine, whatever. I'd done a few before. I was like, doesn't matter.
How do you do the chemistry thing? You're just on chatting to someone else?
You just basically do a fake version of the radio show, essentially.
With another person?
Yeah. So it'd be like Mandy was the co-host.
Yeah.
And the producer was Al, and they'd just be like, all right, so what topics have you got for today? And I go, yeah, boom, boom, boom. All right, well, we'll record these three. Sweet. And then we record it. And then they just go and listen to it, and the bosses decide if they want to go any further. I'd done a bunch of these. So like I said, like the honey dicking thing, it was like, all right, here's another one, whatever.
Yeah. You thought it would go nowhere.
Yeah. But then I went to the next step. Then they flew me down to Sydney. They made me host the show for 2 days. And then they were like, we want you to have the job. And I was going overseas at the time. So then the negotiations and the contract and shit happened. I actually said no to the job originally. I didn't want it. I didn't really want to move. I was like, I got a good thing going in Cairns. I get to travel down and do whatever I want to do, and it's easy. But then they kind of kept pushing. My girlfriend at the time really wanted to move to Sydney to be near her family. So then I eventually said, okay, I'll do it. I'll take the job. So I was on holidays overseas at the time because they make you use all your leave at the end of the year. So I said yes while I was overseas, came back, and they were like, all right, well, we need you here quick. So you need to come Jan 27. So day after the long weekend, it was a Tuesday, and they were like, you just need to get through the last week. Just do one more week on air, get in your car, get down here. We're ready to go. We've got a comm sorted. Mm-hmm. So I was like, sweet, I'll shit this in.
Boom.
Oh, no worries, mate. It's easy. See you next Tuesday.
Foreshadowing.
Yeah. But yeah, I went on air, did the show the Tuesday. Like, so I got in on Monday, did the announcement. Hey, I'm going to be leaving. Next day we had Scott Morrison on, he was Prime Minister at the time.
Yep.
It was 2019. So he was Prime Minister, but he hadn't been elected. So he'd knifed, I think I was right. Yeah, he'd knifed previous Prime Minister. We'd had him on before I went on holidays. So after he'd kind of taken the thing. And it was fine. To be honest, he's a fucking piece of shit. It was one of the worst politicians I have to deal with. Regardless of what your view is, he's a fucking arsehole.
What made it difficult?
So he was had a female co-host, Carly, and he was like, I remember she asked him a question and he quite literally raised his hand to her face, like just went like this and just turned and looked at me instead of kind of acknowledging, like kind of answering her question, but like to me, that kind of shit. And just like was really dismissive and
just treating her like a non-person.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. And then even the way he talked to me, like off air while we were getting ready to go in, and his media team were fucking annoying. Like they were just like, yeah, it was really frustrating. And coming onto a radio show after you've just knifed the Prime Minister to take the job and not willing to say anything about the questions relating to it blew my mind.
Yeah.
I was like, of course you're going to get asked these questions. Don't talk to me like I'm a fucking idiot for asking you these questions. Like,
how dare you ask about the biggest news in the country right now?
Exactly. Anyway, he came
What
on
was the
show.
situation where how did you guys even get him on the show?
Well, it's the week leading up to Australia Day. And he came on our radio show to announce, I believe, it was $250,000 funding for an event that happens in Cooktown in North Queensland, which is the reenactment of Captain Cook's Landing.
Oh, that sounds...
Yeah.
That doesn't sound great.
Yeah, it's not great. And it was a really tense, if I remember right, I think it was a pretty tense time in Cairns at the time. There was like a few hectic things that had happened. Like I think there was like some deaths in community, and there was also like a big like domestic violence issue going on. Mm-hmm. And if I remember right, because you do like a chat, when you have a poly on, you kind of do a chat that's like, all right, here's a serious thing that you need to talk about, and then here's the dumb, stupid thing. And we kind of did it that way as well. And I think Carly pushed him on, oh, you're going to announce $250,000 in funding for a reenactment of Captain Cook's Landing, but X amount of people have been assaulted and killed or whatever by their
We've
partners.
Got bigger issues.
Yeah, this last 6 months, because I think it was a big topic.
Yeah, we've got bigger issues than Captain Cook.
And he really was quite dismissive of it. And that kind of, we got him a little bit annoyed. But we were just kind of doing the show. The thing's kind of getting semi-filmed or whatever. And I was just drinking coffee, as I do each morning. And at the end of the chat, what kind of happens is the media team make you just take like 50 photos with the politician so they can put something up on socials for what I believe is to make them look like they're human for a second, just to be like, oh, look, I hung out with the team.
Yeah, just being a regular guy.
Yeah, just a regular guy hanging out.
Yeah.
And I was like paneling the show because, again, I don't have a producer. So like they're doing that, a song's playing, I've got to keep things moving. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll duck in, take a photo, and I'll come back. And then we're doing back and forth the photos, and then I'm in the photo and I'm drinking my coffee, and my mug happened to have cunt written on it.
Yeah.
So like the handle's the C, and then it's like UNT on the mug.
Yeah.
So just comedy gold. And it was an office mug. It wasn't my mug.
Yeah.
Office mug.
But just one that you just drank from
Use
from
it every
time
day.
to time.
There was another one that I think had arrows either side that said "I'm with these bitches" or some shit. And God, Deborah laughed hard at that one.
But did you even, when you were holding, did you even were aware that?
Not at first.
Yeah.
And then I realized what I was holding.
Yeah.
And so I decided to like turn the mug a bit. And you can kind of tell in the photo, like, so what ended up happening was like, I was in the photo with him holding a mug that had cunt written on it.
Yeah.
And he shared that photo where you could see the mug and see it said cunt on all of his social media.
Yeah.
Which I thought was quite funny. And, but it was the one photo of all the photos. And you can tell because it's like I'm holding a mug, like it's on the flat of my palm. Like no one holds a mug like that. Like, you know what I mean? Like no one's like holds a mug displaying as they're walking around the office.
All right. So
I did have it by the handle.
It was impossible to play it off as like just something that you weren't aware of, and it was just like a misunderstanding.
No,
Yeah.
in that moment, I definitely knew what I was doing. But there was 49 other photos that would have been me just being like, yeah, no one would have known.
That would have been totally innocuous. Yeah.
But he put it up. I kind of saw it. I kind of reshared the story. And I didn't even say anything mean. I just said, oh, this guy gets it. And that was it. Didn't think anything of it. Came back to work next day. No issue. No one even mentioned it. Just kind of like, oh, like, I think one person was like, oh, it's pretty funny. I was like, yeah, it's pretty funny. And then we just kind of kept moving. The Thursday came for me to finish up.
Yep.
Finish up. So I said my goodbyes, did a little farewell on air, got in my car, had all my life packed in my car, my dog in the passenger seat, my girlfriend, I still remember this, was like, hey babe, like really excited. You're going to head down there, get started, find us somewhere to live. I've just put in notice for my 6-figure job to tell them that I'm leaving to follow you and your radio dream down to Sydney. How good's life? And I'm like, yeah, baby.
We're doing it.
Everything's coming up, Shad.
Yeah. It's all happening.
Finally, the dream has happened. Driving out of fucking Cairns. I'm walking on sunshine. Just thinking everything's like rosy.
Yeah.
And then I get to Mackay, which is 9 hours south of Cairns, about 9 hours north of Brisbane. So it's like right in the middle.
Yeah.
And it was like an overnighter. Stayed at a hotel, got up in the morning, and I got a call from the boss.
Old boss or new boss?
The boss of content, essentially.
For Cairns Radio or
for Southern Cross Stereo, so the company. So there's like Southern Cross Stereo is in charge of Hit and Triple M, and he was one of the head of content guys. So what kind of happened, for like a little bit of backstory, in the space between me getting the job and me and the cunt mug, the guy that hired me, who was like head of content, ended up getting dismissed or whatever. Like they downsized the position, so he left. So the guy that hired me.
Yeah.
So now there was like an empty vacuum, and other people started filling into that role. And the guy, his name's Mickey. I name him in the bit anyway, so it doesn't fucking matter. Mickey Mars is his name. But I do remember this phone call. After I got the job, I was told by the manager at the time to give him a call and say, hey, thanks, because he was in charge of regional, so he's essentially in charge of me. And I remember ringing him and going, hey, I just want to say, thanks for, helping me out and getting the job, because it is like a team decision. And he was like, hey, you weren't my first choice.
Yeah.
Like, and said it like not in joking. Like, it was like, well, you weren't my first choice, but, like.
Whatever. Yeah.
Other people make the decision. I was like, wow, okay, well, I guess I'll just go fuck myself then. And then he gives me a call. So that same guy gives me a call when I was on my way out of Mackay. It was like 8 a.m. And he's like, I need you to come into the Mackay office, because in the process of that night, the picture had done the rounds on Twitter. So someone shared it, started getting comments. People within SCA were commenting on it, like prominent hosts like Ash London at the time, and just those kinds of people.
Were they saying it was funny? What were they saying?
Just saying, how good's this? Oh, I didn't know, because I didn't really use Twitter. I just had an account, but I never used it.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh yeah, thanks. Like, I don't know. And then he rings me at 8 a.m. and he's like, we need you to come into the Mackay office. And I was like, oh, does this have anything to do with the mug? And he was like, well, just come into the office, like we need to chat. And I'm like, oh fuck, here we go. Like, what's gonna happen here? So I drive to the Mackay office, and it's early in the morning. So like I pull out the front. I still remember, because I had a manager at the time. I only picked up the manager because I said, if you get me X amount of money, I'll sign with you. Like, that was it, because the negotiations. So he's like, I know him. Just roll with it. I'm sure you're going to be fine.
Does this manager know what he's doing?
Yeah. Well, he used to be in that role. So I was
Okay.
like, okay, well, this should be fine. He goes, just take your hits, offer to take unpaid, whatever. I was like, that's fine. So I go into the meeting. I was still fucking nervous. And I remember I walked into the meeting and I told this story on stage, but I pull out the front. I get my dog out of the car because I'm not going to leave her in the car. So I take her up into the office. And I remember wasn't even really a reception lady. It was just kind of empty. And then someone was wandering in the back and they're like, oh, yeah, you've got it like in the boardroom. So I like walk with my dog into the boardroom. And I remember I walk into the boardroom and there's a lady sitting at the end of the table. And it's kind of like a longer kind of table. And there was a TV screen on the wall and it had the guy, Mickey was on there. And they're like, take a seat. And I sit down and I remember them going, oh, this is, I don't know what her name was, like Sharon or something. And they're just like, oh, she is here as your support person. And I was like, fuck. Yeah, like, because
anytime the support person's pulled out, it's immediately like I'm copping a bullet right now.
Like, I'm like, because it's not like she's there to be like, she's just a big fan of the joke. I just thought you guys should meet because
she's got a cut mug too.
And I thought you guys, it's nice that you met. Anyway, pack up your shit. See you down at Tuesday.
Yeah,
just a quick stopover. Just wanted to have a laugh with you.
Heavy, and you've got your dog there with you.
My dog's in there with me.
You should have said, "This is my support person." I don't need you, lady. Yeah.
Oh man, I sat down there at the end of the table, and I remember they do like the stuff where they ask you like what happened, and they're like premeditate. They try to push this idea that it was premeditated, like so you planned this. Whose idea was it? Like they asked me shit like that, like I'm gonna throw some people under the bus, and I was like, no, there wasn't a plan.
It was a mug that just sat in the office and happened to be in your hand, and then you thought, well, this will be funny. I'll put it on my palm so they can see the word cunt.
That's pretty much exactly how I described it.
Yeah,
and it was like I was like, no one planned it. I was like, there wasn't any meeting or anything.
They try to make it sound much more malicious because then they feel better about fucking axing you.
And I was like, I don't know what you meant. Like this wasn't a planned gotcha or anything. I was like, you can listen to the chat. Like I talked about some dumb shit with the Prime Minister, of course. Get at me for being rude in that, sure. But like, there was no kind of, you're like, it was none of that. But I was like, it's just a mug. And they go, whose is it? I was like, it's the office. It's in your office. Like, it's just your mug.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what you want from me. But then they're like, have you got anything to say for yourself before we kind of decide what we're going to do? And I said, yeah. And I was kind of apologetic because I was sitting there going, fuck, I've got like missus to think of, my family,
your whole
money.
future on the line,
And I was just like, look, guys, I'm sorry. I mean, but whatever you need me to do to kind of smooth it over, I'm happy to do. And I actually said to him, I said, look, I'll take unpaid leave. Like, I won't be paid for like a month. Like, just keep me off air if you want it to be like that until it dies down or whatever. Like, I won't take any pay.
Yeah.
I'm happy to do that. Whatever you need. You need me to do a statement, whatever. Like, I'm happy. And I was quite apologetic, not how I am now. But, and then the TV just kind of goes and deliberates. And then I remember he came back and I still remember what he said.
Was there other people like sitting in the room with him?
No, it was just him. It was quite literally just him in like an office, like just like a Zoom call.
Yeah.
And he went away and the deliberation, I remember, wasn't even that long. Like, because anything in that moment, would feel like ages. And it didn't even feel like ages.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, this wasn't long at all.
No.
In real terms, I was back on the road by 9 o'clock.
He could have said anything. You could have said anything to him, and he still would have had the same idea.
It was already done.
Yeah.
I was already done for the job.
So how do you phrase it?
He comes back on the screen and he goes,
"You're fired, cunt.
You embarrass the CEO, you embarrass the company, and you embarrass the Prime Minister. You're fired effective immediately." And then
I think that the Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, has had a lot more things to be embarrassed about than a fucking novelty mug, right?
Yeah.
He's a novelty mug, if you know what I mean.
Hey, we're getting political. No, he said that, and like when I do the bit on stage, I'm like, the TV turned off. There was one other thing that happened after that chat because I was like, fuck, And I've been working in radio for 8 years. I'd worked for 10 years to try and I'd been doing 2 years prior to try and get there.
That must have hit you like a ton of bricks.
Yeah, it was fucked. I was just like fuck. And then I was like, surely there's something I can do. No, there's not, like, right. And I was like, mate, what? Like, and I said to him, I said, Mickey, I've worked for you. Like, he's been my boss, essentially, like top of the food chain kind of thing. I said, I've worked for you in this company for 4 years. And I'd never lost a radio survey in Cairns. In fact, like, I'll say it, I fucking dominated. The shows I was in, and obviously my co-hosts were a part of that, we had the best show in the market by far. We billed way more money. They won so many more things on the back of our show. I was like, I can do the fucking job. And you know how good I am at this gig. Like, don't just leave me out. And I literally said, don't leave me on the fucking streets of Mackay.
Yeah.
Cause a shit off. But I was like, don't leave me on fucking Mackay. He's like, nah, it's a decision. He goes, you'll be given, we've decided we'll give you a night's accommodation in Mackay while you figure your stuff out. And you'll have access to a psych. And then I was annoyed. And then I was like, I don't know if I said this to Mickey or the fucking other guy that rang me afterwards, because they got people I knew to ring me afterwards because they had the realization, I reckon, that fuck, this guy's driving a car 9 hours from anywhere he's from. He's just packed up his life in Cairns. Where's he going to go? Right. Yeah. And they started getting people that I knew within the company in management roles
to try and soften the blow, right?
Just to ring and check on me.
Yeah.
Right. And I remember I was like, I don't need your fucking psych because you're worried I'm going to hang myself in the bathroom. But like, so the TV turns off and it's just me and my support person. And I remember she goes,
was she any help?
Well, good on you, Sharon. I remember goes, I'll go get you a glass of water. Because there's no water on the table. Which you'd think would be the first thing you'd fucking do. And then she like leaves and all I think in my head is like, yeah, that's what's going on right now. Yeah. I'm not freaking out because my life's falling apart. I'm just a little bit parched. Yeah. These tears, this is a little bit parched.
He's a thirsty boy.
Yeah. So she leaves the room.
Yeah.
And my dog, who has been watching this whole ordeal, I've pushed back the chair, man. I'm like this. Like, head down, trying not to cry because I'm just like, what am I going to do? How am I going to tell my partner? Like, my family live on the Central Coast as well. I'm like, this is going to be fucking embarrassing for them. Like, what are we going to do? I've got no money because they've made me use all my leave and shit. Like, I've got nothing. I've got nowhere to live.
Yeah.
And it's all kind of hitting me. And then my dog, I remember she goes to lick me on the side of the face and I'm like, get out of here, Slipper. And she goes to the corner of the room and does a shit on the carpet. and in that moment...
That seems quite poetic.
Yeah, in that moment, this is no word of a lie. I got up and I went, good girl. I grabbed her lead and I left.
With the dog shit.
I just left.
On the carpet.
Like, and the lady came back, but I wasn't there. Like, I just walked out. I was like, you know what? Like, when that happened, I was like, fuck this place. And I got out. I got in my car that was parked out the front and I just fucking noped the fuck out of Mackay.
Yeah.
And
they took a shit on your life and and you took a shit. Your dog took a shit back on them, right back at them.
It's funny, like, because I tell that story like on stage and like obviously like, you cut bits out and you bridge it up because it's, to be a comedic story. But the part afterwards was like, it was hard. Like, it was pretty hard. I know it's like a lot of people had a lot of worse stuff, but it's like there's something about losing your gig that, and it's like I've heard a lot of other people talk about this when they have to move out of a certain life. Like, I don't know if you had people that talking about leaving. Like I work, as you know, like with some people you've spoken to, like Simo, like Brent Simmons and stuff, that leave a criminal life and then go into like normal life. And there's like, it's that similar type of thing where you've got to go, oh, that part's gone. Yep. And you've got to figure out, what do I do now? And you realize, holy shit, that like part, that radio thing was embedded. I didn't realize how much it was embedded in my personality. Yep. Like, it was just who I was. And it was, I worked in radio again. I ended up picking up some work not too long after, like after about 6 months or something in Brisbane. And that's how I ended up moving there. I had to go and do comedy shows at the Adelaide Fringe when I didn't even know where I was living. And that's not a moneymaker either. But I had a lot of people come though because it's a Cup Mug story came out. But it was rough, man. That drive back was like brutal.
How did your partner take it?
Oh,
Because she'd quit her job as well.
yeah. She was at the time, like, she was actually kind of cool. She was just like, I remember she said on the phone, she wasn't overly sympathetic because she kind of thought it was a dumb idea to the mug.
Sure, but like, does the punishment fit the crime? I don't know.
I don't think so.
I don't think so either,
I don't think
man.
so when the same network, let the great man Kyle Sandilands do the things that he's done, and he went to bat for me on the breakfast show the next day because any chance for him to badmouth SCA was fantastic. And
Oh, so he came to your defense?
yeah, like he
good.
just went on his breakfast show and said how fucked they were for turfing me for doing it. And but yeah, it's like it definitely didn't fit the crime. But her reaction was, well, you can't come back here. Because, and I think it was like nice because it was like a motivating thing. We're moving on to the next step of life.
Yeah.
But there was also an element in my head where I was kind of like, yeah, but she wanted to move to Sydney. And then we didn't end up going there. We ended up moving to Brisbane anyway. And then that relationship fell apart. But it was like, yeah, it was rough, man. That drive down, you're furious, then you're upset. And then like, it's just like back and forth. 'Cause I'm like, these fucking bastards, right?
Yeah, you'd be going through all the emotions, you know.
Yeah, and I'm a pretty emotional person. But yeah, it was funny. So then me and my dog just fucking couch surfed for like about a month or so. I went and did gigs though.
Yeah, and that must have
Bombed.
felt. Oh yeah,
Bombed.
Why?
So hard.
because you were too much in your own head.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I got to Brisbane, partied for the weekend. My mate was like, turn your phone off because I had all the like Daily Mail and people like that trying to ring me for a comment. I look back on that time and I'm like, I was listening to the wrong people that time, maybe.
Yeah.
Where they were like, don't say anything, we'll try and get you another radio gig, like whatever.
Instead of writing it.
Instead of really digging in.
Yeah.
And I think
True.
I think back to that, I'm like, I wonder if I would have given myself a leg up or a
More profile,
Fuck up.
Yeah, I don't know. There's plenty of guys that seem to be on radio that like, just have the profile as being a dickhead, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you needed to become a bigger dickhead. And
I
they
don't
would
think
be
I
like,
have it in me though, because of how much it rocks.
become a bigger dickhead and they'll be calling you, mate. Like, we need you on the radio now.
Yeah, you know what? I did have a company called Inappropriate Mug Co. got in touch with me and were like, we want to sell the cunt mug. I was like, cool, man. Like, yeah. But it was, I remember it was rough. It was a rough little like period of trying to figure out what I was doing, but the radio dream. And then I got back into it for a bit, but then.
So what do you do for a day job now in addition to comedy?
I just like working like editing for. I work for mates. Funnily enough, I work for the guy who gave me a job at Nova after I got sacked.
Oh, so you're working in podcasting, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. So I got hired by a guy at Nova who was like, "You're the kind of guy for us."
Yeah, that's cool.
And then
Do you enjoy that? It seems from my interactions when I was doing the Clink, it sounds like you semi enjoy it, right?
yeah, I mean, you know what I like about it is I can travel. I can do it from anywhere.
Yep.
And I think what that getting fired thing forced me to have to do, especially when I moved to Brisbane, was like I had to do something.
Yep.
So I drove Uber, and then I met like the guys that were starting Good Chat at the time, like the comedy club in Brisbane, and like started doing some stand up there and met some people there, and really just started gigging and like learning to be a bit, better, I guess. And then that kind of meant I started making a little bit of money because I could MC, and then that became more of my life.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is actually really fun. And like even when my relationship kind of fell apart because I was probably leaning more into like I want to do the comedy side of thing rather than get the desk job and earn money.
That's a hard conversation to have.
It's a hard conversation to have when she wants to, get married and have kids. But that finished up pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But that kind of made me get more into that, and I started having a lot more positive moments on the back of comedy more than anything else.
Are you happier now than you were when you were working radio?
Yeah. It's fun. I don't know. Yeah. I'll say this because people go, "Oh, do you regret it?" I get asked that, like, "Oh, do you regret it?" And back then, I probably would have said, like, the money for those that are probably wondering was $110,000 was the contract
for the Gosford gig.
The Gosford gig.
Yeah.
It was $110K a year with, I think, if I remember right, I probably have it in an email somewhere, but the potential for like 20 extra K or something in bonuses.
Yeah.
So it was going to be the most amount of cash I'd ever made for doing radio.
Yeah.
Because in Cairns, I spent 3 years just to get 50K a year.
Yep.
Plus bonuses.
So, yeah, it was finally going to be a proper living.
So it was like a proper living.
It was your future.
Yeah.
And it was fucked because
then
of
I
one
went
stupid novelty mug.
Yeah. And then I think my tax return for the year afterwards was $37,500.
Yeah.
But like, you know, I think the other thing as well is when you go, were you happier back then? I was in my early 20s back then. Well, actually I was 30 when I did the mug. But I'd say I'm definitely feel like I'm doing the thing I like more now.
Yep.
Because I think about the idea of going back to radio, and since then the people that have made those decisions aren't there anymore. And the irony is that I just the other week got booked to do a gig for Triple M in Brisbane for what they call the Legends Lunch.
Yeah.
Which is where they get all the footy players in, everyone leaves their phones outside, and they tell all these cooked stories from back in the day that no one should hear. And they get a comedian to do 10 minutes in the middle.
How many hours are they doing for that show? There must be a lot of stories.
Yeah. All of them seem to have to do with cocaine, I've noticed. But and a lot of CTE in that room. But there was I got asked to do the gig, and I was like, do they know that it's me that's supposed to be doing this thing? And a few of the people I know that still work in radio and stuff, because I've still got mates that work in the industry, and they were like, yeah, like we know, but I don't know if everyone knows. And like, what are you going to do? Like, are you going to tell the story? And I was like, of course I'm going to tell the fucking story. So I got up on stage, and it was only a couple of weeks ago. It was probably one of the most cathartic gigs I've ever had.
You're at a Triple M. You're at a
I'm
Triple
at
M
a
event.
Triple M event.
You're getting paid to be there.
I'm getting paid to be there.
And you're telling a story where you rip on Triple M.
And I ripped shreds off Triple M for sacking me for calling the Prime Minister a cunt.
Oh, that is...
And I was like, full circle, baby. This is fucking mad.
Oh, man. You could die a happy man after that.
I was like, you know what? We're even.
Congratulations.
Thanks, mate.
That must have felt so good. You've come full circle.
It was so good. They haven't paid me yet, but
fuck it. You got the compensation you needed for your soul, brother.
I know, right? Isn't it? But yeah, so I'd say at that moment I was like, I'm fucking happier now. You know? Yeah. But I did learn a bit. I don't know if you need to get serious on this podcast or what, but I did learn that like it was one of the more trying situations of your life to try and, I mean, you've gone through it. You've had to rebuild. How did you kind of, because I feel like I've just been talking nonstop in this podcast.
That's how it works.
Okay, right.
Yeah, I find you find when you go through shit just how resilient you are, you know, that you can weather the storm. And it's not fun to go through, but you get through it, and you find a way to be happy, and you're like, oh, okay, it's not the end of the world. You know, it just seems like that at the time.
Yeah, I think it definitely like echoes. I mean, how long have you been out?
About 19, 20 months now.
Oh, right. So what, like that first year, because I know you said at the top about how like we were talking and when you were like talking about wanting to get into stand-up. And I remember you used to message me, but it would mostly be like clips or memes. And I remember I'd say to my mate Nick, I was like, you know, messaged me Hammer. He's like, oh, wasn't he in prison? I was like, is that why he's only sending me memes and videos? Like, is that all he can get out of prison? Because I didn't know you were out. And I'm just like, is this guy sneaking a phone and sending me memes from prison? What a risk.
Imagine if that was the only reason I managed to smuggle a phone in. Just to send Shad Wicka some cool funny memes. I hope they were good ones.
But like in that first 12 months when you were out, like were you, and obviously very different extremes. You went to prison. I just lost a job. But did you have like a thing where you're like, what do I do?
No, I knew as soon as I got out, I was going to do comedy. I just,
I guess because you had the trial by fire and a lot of time to think.
Yeah, I just knew I knew I had an idea of how the pieces of the puzzle would come together, and then I got out. I started training, got fit, looked after my mind, read books, and then once my bail rules started to relax a bit more, and I was able to leave the house, I started doing comedy, and did it nonstop ever since. But I just, there was something in me that just told me this is the plan.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't have that.
We better wrap it up because I've got to get you to your show.
Yeah, I should probably get to this gig.
Well, I'm glad. I think it was good to finish with you being able to do the show for Triple M, right? Because that seems like a nice little way to.
Bow.
Yeah. But look, we'll have to get you on another time to hear some of your other stories about times when shit's have gone sideways. But Shad, thank you very much for coming on.
Absolute pleasure, mate.
Shit's gone sideways.